It's Tuesday, October 14th, and we have a really rare tornado risk situated in Southern California, even encapsulating the Los Angeles area. Here it is, kind of outlined by the Storm Prediction Center. Luckily, it's only a 2% very conditional chance for a couple of weak spin up tornadoes, but it's still really rare that we would even see this at all down there in that region at all. Of course, this is going to be with that associated risk of severe weather. There's a marginal risk out there, and there's also going to be a marginal risk in parts of central New Mexico today. Now, the main thing with both of these risks is actually going to be the risk for some damaging winds, potentially seeing some gust in excess of 60 miles an hour. And for our hail risk, luckily that's going to be non-existent out in Southern California and Los Angeles, but it is going to be pretty prevalent out here in New Mexico, potentially even seeing hail up to around 1 to 1.5 inches in diameter. But here's how it looks like the weather, specifically severe weather, could unfold out here today in the west. We're going to start in our Southern California and Los Angeles risk area, and we're definitely going to see a pretty big line of storms kind of pushing in through the area. This is going to be from a big cyclone and associated front moving through. It looks like our weather for the region with those severe characteristics could start even before daybreak. Now, as we go further into the day, those risks are only going to intensify. With around lunch, we could potentially see that tornado threat start to get going, and then actually after that, it looks like it's going to be pretty much over even before lunch. Actually, this is actually going to kind of move in pretty quickly, so it looks like after the morning hours, our biggest round of severe weather is going to be over with that tornado threat as well. That's likely going to finish up as that cold front passes through. And then after that, it's just going to be some nice cooler temperatures. Now, shifting a little bit more east to our central New Mexico risk area, it looks like along a trough or just an area of general convergence, we could see some storms kind of initiate around midday as well. These could potentially be severe, maybe seeing some hail, damaging winds with these. And because our shear from this system out here actually is going to be so good, it's even going to reach all the way out here to parts of New Mexico, I wouldn't even rule out maybe a weak spin up tornado. And then this is another area kind of capturing my eye up here in far northwestern Colorado. I wouldn't rule out the potential for some severe weather and maybe even a tornado up here also. So that's going to be another region to look out for. That's going to be closer to just another area of some forcing from that trough, maybe some weak convergence going on out here as well. So that's going to be another area to look for. But here is a look at our jet stream. Of course, here is going to be that big low pressure center with that big trough, loads of forcing from this. The more strength that we see from the winds just means more forcing essentially, than also that associated cold front pushing through the Southern California and Los Angeles region, bringing a lot of weather. Then it looks like we could have maybe a bit of a prefrontal trough out here as well in central New Mexico, initiating some of our weather. And then just our main trough, it looks like as it ejects to the north and east, maybe we get a cluster of storm up there in northwestern Colorado, kind of like how the HRRR was showing, also bringing that threat for severe weather. And then we see that big ridge over the southern plains and parts of the Mississippi River Valley, also bringing some more organizing shear to our storms out here as well. And then we're going to talk more about our shear and how that will aid in our setup right now. And here's a weather sounding doing just that. We're going to see that a lot of the normal things that we look for, like cape, and then also some instability or dry air loft, isn't really going to be present. It looks like it's going to be pretty stable in the first 3 kilometers of the atmosphere actually, but this setup is going to be entirely driven by just the very, very favorable shear that we have in front of our line of storms. 91 knots of bulk shear. We're definitely going to see some organized clusters, maybe bringing some severe characteristics, and our low level helicity and low level shear is going to be very favorable for potentially even a spin up tornado. And I definitely think our cloud bases are going to be low enough to the ground for this to happen. Also, I definitely think that we are going to see some very favorable wind variance. So that is why there is that potential for a weak spin up tornado. Now, it's mostly a linear, kind of disorganized mode. So that's why that threat isn't stronger. Then also things like Cape are just not present at all. This is going to be entirely driven by shear. So I definitely think there might be the potential for one, although it's going to be kind of completely carried by shear. So that's why that potential isn't any higher. Now, moving a bit more east to our New Mexico risk area, we're still going to see some really favorable shear, almost 60 knots of bulk organizing shear. Definitely think we're going to see some strong updrafts, maybe some organized storms out here as well. Then even our low level shear and helicity would be favorable enough to support a tornado threat. And because our cloud bases are going to be definitely low enough to support that, I would not rule that out in central New Mexico. We're also going to have quite a bit more Cape, although it's still not really even 1,000, which 1,000 is kind of the bottom of the arc where we'd start to see thunderstorms. But because we have such good shear, we also have some dry air loft, maybe supporting some stronger downdrafts, a bit more Cape than usual. I definitely think we are going to see some severe weather, maybe even a weak small tornado threat, but it's mostly going to be for some hail and damaging winds, kind of like how we discussed earlier. Now, moving away from the United States and severe weather, we're going to take a peek at the tropics. Here is Tropical Storm Lorenzo. This has just formed earlier today, and it's actually going to just kind of make that curve out towards the Atlantic, not harming the US at all. There has been some agreements from the models that there is a chance of something getting going, kind of aided by the Central American gyre. We're definitely going to want to keep our eyes out for that for the next couple of days, and we're going to watch to see if we are going to get the first season in a decade with no hurricane landfalls in the United States. Let's hope that trend stays strong. And the very last thing we're looking at is going to be a slight risk of some flash flooding out here in the Los Angeles region, potentially 2 to 4 inches of rain dumped in a pretty quick period of time. Definitely want to be aware for some flash flood warnings if you're out there in that region. Kind of a bummer because it's such a populated area. So definitely want to stay very well alert if you are in that region. Of course, we do have a couple of other marginal risks. One is going to be kind of associated with that big system bringing our slight risk down to Southern California and other parts of California stretching up into the central California Valley, maybe 1 to 2 inches of rain there. And the same thing would go for central New Mexico as well.